Today, I'm going to take you through the best tips and tricks for getting a perfect intricate cut. And if you follow these steps, you can cut almost anything out on your Cricut using cardstock. Your first step is to check your blade. So before I do any intricate cut, I take my blade out and I take a look at it and see if there's any dirt and debris on it. I do see a little debris on it. It could use a cleaning. This is my Maker 3 blade. This is my Air Explorer blade. And as you can see, this one is a little more dirty. My last cut was with glitter cardstock, and I have glitter all over the blade. So I'm gonna clean this one as well. With all these little pieces and debris and adhesive that get stuck on the blade, it's harder then to get a nice clean cut when you're doing those small intricate turns and cuts. So what I want to do first is I want to take a sheet of aluminum foil, and you've probably seen this before, but you scrunch it up into a ball, and then you take your blade, stick it out, stick it in, and pull it out. So you do that a handful of times, and you get a lot of the debris off. So I'm going to do that with my dirty one too. And you can see it looks way better already. But then what I'm gonna do for my second step to clean is I'm going to take an alcohol wipe and I'm going to wipe it down. And just be very careful that you don't cut yourself. Now, why am I wiping it down when I don't see anything on it? Because you can get adhesive on your blade from vinyl, from stickers, and it's hard to see with the naked eye, but if it's there, it's not allowing your blade to do its best cut. And this one, my glitter, you can see all the additional glitter that came off of my blade even after I used the aluminum foil ball. So I kind of like to do a two-step cleaning process to make sure that they are as clean as they can and they can put their best performance forward. And I do want to talk about one other thing with these blades very quickly. I often hear people giving advice online to buy a new blade, that your blade is dull. Well, I just wanted to mention two things. One, I have had my same blade that came with my machine for 5 years. I use my machine at least daily. I cut the basics, cardstock, glitter, sticker paper, etc. Nothing too crazy. And I've never had to change my blade. So if you've had your blade for just a few months, then it's probably not dull. That's probably not the problem. Even a couple years. I mean, these blades are made out of premium German carbide steel. So it's going to take a little bit to really dull them, especially if you're buying the Cricut brand blade. That's another thing, the aluminum foil ball. I've heard people say over and over again, sharpen your blade with the aluminum foil. Again, it's premium German carbide steel. You are not going to sharpen that with a little ball of wimpy aluminum foil. The aluminum foil is only to get the debris off. Next step is to check your mat. This is very important. For cutting these intricate cuts, you want to make sure your cardstock sticks evenly and uniformly across the whole mat. So if your mat's not very sticky, then it's not going to work out as well. And this is a dirty mat. So as you can see, I have little bits of leftover cardstock everywhere. So if I would leave this on here, this is a place where my cardstock is not going to stick to my mat. So when I get to this area and my Cricut is trying to do all these nice little turns and cuts, it's going to get some play in the cardstock, and that wiggle is going to allow errors to come through in your cut. So it's the same thing. If it's not very sticky up here in the corner, because this is my most used corner, and if I would put my cardstock down, and even if I hold it on there with painter's tape, it's not going to work because the painter's tape might be holding the edges, but you still will have all that wiggle and all that play in the middle with the cardstock. So what you want to do is you want to make sure your mat is nice and clean. And I have a video about how I do that. I like to use baby wipes. I'll link the video below in case you want to clean your mats the same way. So make sure it's nice and clean and sticky. And if it's not, then it's time to buy a new mat. And my mats I use are Tech Wrap mats. I like them because I think they're just as good as the Cricut mats, and they're much cheaper than the Cricut ones. So once you get your mat cleaned, or you get one that's new and sticky, what you want to do is when you are applying your cardstock, you want to take a brayer and you want to go over every inch with equal pressure. And a brayer is great. I use it every single time for applying all my materials, cardstock, vinyl, sticker paper, whatever it is. Even if your mat is sticky and clean, using the brayer still works. It still helps because now you have even pressure everywhere. It's evenly stuck. There's no wiggle room. There's no play. So you're setting yourself up for a great intricate cut right now. So what I want to talk about next is cardstock. So it matters what type of cardstock you use. First off, you want a solid core cardstock. And what does that mean? That means if you tear it, it's the same color all the way through. So it does not have a white core. If yours has a white core, then it is going to be an uphill battle to get that to cut an intricate cut. My favorite cardstock to use is AC Cardstock, which is American Crafts cardstock. It cuts well. I've never had any issues with it. It holds up well. It's nice. The only problem with it is you usually have to order ahead on an online store, so you kind of have to plan ahead. If you just want to go to the craft store and pick something up last minute, or if you run out halfway through one of your projects, the Recollections line at Michael's works very well for me as well. Now you can buy cardstocks in different weights. If I'm doing an intricate cut with a paper project, I lean toward the 80-pound weight. If you go much higher than that, it's going to be really hard to get an intricate cut on something so thick. If you go lower than that, this is Recollections brand, and this is 65 pounds. This is the 8.5 by 11. It's more affordable, so this also cuts just fine. And when I need a lighter weight cardstock, it's great, and it should work perfectly for an intricate cut. Step 5 is to check which setting you're cutting on. So on my Cricut, I usually always use this setting, Cardstock for Intricate Cuts. So if you have an Air Explorer 2, just change your dial to custom and go ahead and search for it. And if you're on the Maker, just browse your materials and you don't have to scroll down too far. It's right here, Cardstock for Intricate Cuts. Now, if I'm using that 80-pound cardstock like I like to use, I also like to change my pressure default to more. And that adds, from what I've read, about 22 more points of pressure. Now, if you're still not cutting through, if you've done all the steps, your blade is clean, you're on a great mat, and maybe you're just not cutting all the way through your cardstock, you might have to add a custom setting. So if when you're on your canvas, if you come over to your hamburg menu and you drop down and you go to Manage Custom Materials and select whichever maker you're working with, because if you have more than one, your custom materials are set up based on your machine. And if you scroll down here, you can see what cut pressure and how many cuts are happening. So if we go to Cardstock for Intricate Cuts, they're using 200 points of pressure and they're doing 2 cuts. If you scroll down and you find the light cardstock, so the 65 pound I was talking about, the pressure is 214 and only 1 cut. And if you keep scrolling to the medium cardstock, 80 pounds, you see that the pressure is 320 and only 1 cut. So you might have to add more pressure. So we are at 222 points of pressure if we're setting the pressure setting at the end to more on our intricate cardstock. So what you might have to come in here and do is add your own. So if you scroll down to the bottom and select Add New Material, And let's say I'm going to call this 80-pound cardstock intricate. And I'm going to put my initials after it so I know I added that and that was not something that Cricut added. So I'm going to hit save. And it's going to allow me to put in my pressure. So, like I said, we were at 222 points of pressure. Let's say it didn't cut all the way through. Let's add 20 at a time. So I would do 242. And then I think the key for the intricate cut is you want multiple cuts. So you want to cut it 2 times. I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to browse my materials, or I'm going to go to custom. And I'm going to type in 80. And here's the 80-pound for intricate. And I'm going to select that. And if that still doesn't cut through, I'm going to go back in, I'm going to edit it, I'm going to add 20 more points of pressure, and I'm going to keep doing a test cut until I get to the right pressure for whichever cardstock I'm using. But like I said, you probably won't have to do that. If you follow all these steps, I use 80-pound cardstock all the time. I use the intricate cardstock intricate cuts, and I just add more pressure, and it turns out gorgeous. The last thing to mention is also just check your file. I mean, some things just can't be cut out of cardstock. I mean, if I'm trying to do a script like this, it's very thin, it's very small, it's probably not going to be successful. What you could do is you could make it larger, or you could cut it out of vinyl and apply it to your cardstock using vinyl. And we got the perfect cut following all the steps. One thing to keep in mind when removing your cardstock from your mat, you want to flip your mat upside down and you want to peel the mat away from the cardstock. That way it doesn't tear. If you follow all these tips and tricks and steps, then you too can have a frustration-free, gorgeously cut, intricate cardstock creation.